We arranged this morning is I have 2 minutes to introduce myself, of which I've used one already. Gareth is going to speak for, he says, 15 minutes, so we're going to give him a nudge at 14. And then we're going to have a panel discussion, which I'll moderate. And on our panel today, we have some of our partners in Peru. So we have Jean Thomas, who is head of mission of USAID, based in Lima. We have Steve Gretzinger, who is a senior director of the Climate Smart Investment Program with Conservation International. And we have Murray Collins, who is the chief executive of Space Intelligence, which we use and is one of the world's leading remote sensing companies. You'll hear more from him tomorrow. So he won't be giving a great deal of detail on his company today, but we've asked him a few questions to go through. So just before I let Gareth start, I just want to tell you about a photograph I have in my computer. And this photograph was taken in 1930, and it's in the desert. And there's 3 guys sitting outside a tent with a camel. And they, in 1930, were amongst the poorest people on earth. That's in Saudi Arabia. Of course, what we wanted was beneath them, which was the oil and gas in the sands. And that has made that economy incredibly wealthy and powerful. Today, you can find similar pictures in forests. You can find a family living in a hut, maybe with a goat, a few chickens. And these are amongst the poorest people on earth. But they're surrounded by what we need and want, which is biodiversity, carbon storage, production of ecosystem services, rainfall, and so forth as well. So our vision for the market for carbon, the market for biodiversity, is one of sustainable development, of creating opportunities for people today who are amongst the poorest on earth. So you'll hear from us, and you'll see what we're doing in terms of creating economic opportunities, but of course conservation is founded in changing the way people interact with nature. So with that, I'll pass to Gareth. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Good morning to everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity to talk a little bit about GGF, Green Gold Forestry. I've only got a few minutes, and I've got to cram in 15 years of experience and knowledge and excitement, but what I would like to leave as a message to you all today is the importance to us of the community role and developing community economies to try to improve their livelihoods within our project and within our business model. I think that's the key and fundamental message that I would like to leave with you all, and if I miss anything else out, I apologize. Basically, we're in Peru. We're in the northeast of Peru in the region of Loreto, and we are close to the town. Our offices are in Iquitos, which is the largest city in the world which doesn't have a road going to it, for anybody that doesn't know. And our concessions, we have 336,000 hectares of government forestry concessions designated as permanent production concessions. They are the areas in brown that you see there. The areas, and you can see in the north, the majority of our concessions, but down there in the south and at the bottom of the picture we have another area. Around our concessions you can see some dark green. They are other permanent production concessions. And you can maybe just see, maybe not at the back, some pink areas close to our concessions, and they are community lands. They are our neighbors. These concessions are given by the state for 40 years, and they can be renewed every 5 years, so they are effectively, as long as we play by the rules, they are permanent concessions which will stay with the company. As Stuart mentioned, we started in 2008. We've been around for 15 years, and we started off as a logging company, and our mission, our objective was to demonstrate that logging and transformation of timber could be sustainable and profitable in the Peruvian jungle. We applied best methods to this, FSC certification. We looked at minimizing our logging and best practice with regards to logging and felling. But we were also struggled with climate change as for example, during 10 years, our number of logging days reduced from about 100 per year to around about 50 or 60. And this was because the dry season is no longer dry. It's raining, and it became more and more difficult to get the kind of volumes that we needed to remain profitable. And of course, that reduced our sustainability. So we came to the conclusion that we couldn't be sustainable and profitable, one or the other. And that around about 2017-18 made us take another look at the voluntary carbon market. And we saw an opportunity. We did a feasibility study. We did a project document. And in 2020, we got our, through the Vera standard and the VM10 methodology, we certified 184,000 hectares in our conservation project. A 20-year project, an average of 487,000 VCUs per year. It kind of changes with the project, but that's the average. And as I say, we started in August 2020. Our first validation period finished 2022 in August. And I'm glad to say and proud to say that last week, I've just come back from Iquitos, we completed our first audit, verification audit. And if you see a little twinkle in my eye, though it hasn't been officially announced, I am quite confident that by Q2, we will have registered VCUs for sale, which is very exciting for us. I must stress, and I must thank Jene for being with us today. We are very proud to be working with USAID. The process of converting, transitioning from a logging company to a conservation company is taking 3 years. We have considerable expense in implementing, especially in the area of our community relations and all what we're trying to do with the communities and our methodology. So we have a series of expenses and no income. And we're very, very fortunate that USAID stepped up and said that they would support us and help us bridge that gap during this 3-year period. We work also with US Forest Service. We have a long relationship with them of collaboration, especially in the areas of working with the government and trying to improve government systems and the forestry sector. And we also have an agreement. This is the logo of the Loreto regional government. We have a cooperation agreement with them, which allows us to work on projects of mutual interest, such as tracing shipping going down the river, looking for illegal logs, and helping them to do what they have to do. We've implemented a certification course for forest wardens, which is now a registered course, which we've done jointly, and we're working on an annex to the forestry concession contract, which, though it initially states that logging is the principal activity, the concession holder has the rights to the ecosystem services, and the non-timber forest products. But we are working to align those 3 areas so that they have equal merit. And this will encourage, we hope, other concession holders to do the same thing that we are doing. We work with other entities, FECO-NAMCO, which is the black symbol almost at the top. They are the community, they are the authority which manages the Federation of Communities, and we work with them. We work with educational institutions. We work with certifying bodies to give credibility to our project. We work with a zoo, San Diego Zoo, to understand better the biodiversity, and of course NGOs who can help us deliver the on the ground activities that we need to do. We are working with space intelligence, and it's all about satellite mapping of biomass carbon stocks. Fortunately, Murray is here because it is mostly over my head, but what I can say is that it is hugely useful and important to us to be able to get this satellite imagery so that we understand about the biomass and what's happening in the forest. Just an example of a couple of slides here. You can see our concessions, our project area in yellow, the community area in red, and on the other side, on the right-hand side, the same photo, and perhaps you can see the red dots there. They indicate intervention in the forest, and you will see, it's very clear, that the intervention inside our concessions is considerably less than outside, which hopefully demonstrates that we're doing a good job. And I should stress that most of these red dots are, in fact, natural occurrences. That's the high-tech side. The low-tech side is that we've generated 30 monitoring plots inside our area, which are inspected. We've done inventories. We know everything that has been identified and measured, and we send people in on a regular basis to see what's going on there. And we are able to bring this high-tech and low-tech information together so that we can combine it and make sure that we're getting as accurate information as possible. I mentioned communities and how important they are to us. We have 18 community neighbors. They are not inside our concessions, they are outside, but they are neighbors close by. And we think that they are the most important element of our project. These 18 communities, when we started off, they agreed to work with us. We explained the project to them. They are working with us. The first problem we had with them was their own situation and status. Many of them didn't have land title. Many of them were not formally registered as communities. So we had to work on that. We've now got 12 of the 18 communities fully registered where they need to be, which allows them to apply for government aid or other types of grant aid. And we'll have the other 6 done during the course of this year. We have also worked with one of our NGO partners, CIFB, to develop a baseline plan so that we understand who's in our community, what they're doing, how old they are, etc. That baseline plan, 4,500 people we've got. We know about their families, how they're made up, etc., etc. One of the key points there, Stuart mentioned the poverty. The average family in our community areas receive $25 a month, which gives you an idea of the size of the problem we have and what we're trying to do to improve their economic situations. Gender action plan. The situation, the position of women in the communities, and I want to stress in the company as well, and I'm very proud that 50% of our staff are female, and that's something that we're very keen to promote and to increase. But in the communities, they also have traditionally a low profile. They're not involved with decision-making processes, and this is something that we are changing. We are helping the women to start being there, taking decisions, having positions within their communities. New micro-businesses. We're working with the communities to help them develop economically sustainable activities which will improve their economic situations. This lady here is making hammocks, which they used to produce and sell locally. They are now, through our intervention and help, selling them online and internationally. So that's a little development for them, and it allows women to be together in the community center with their children making hammocks. So this is the kind of activity that we're trying to develop. This little chap here helps his mum and dad in an egg-laying production that we've got. Another activity which we want to develop into eventually a hen reproduction process and also a chicken meat process. But it's another example. We've provided the hens, we've provided all of the technical knowledge that they need to develop this activity. Children, of course, are hugely important to us. I think many people say that once you get to about 20, you're lost when it comes to conservation and learning how to develop new techniques and ideas about living. We're working with the children. Plastic collection, rubbish collection, making them aware of their environment so that as they grow up, they can be more and more involved and understand how important their surroundings are to the rest of the world and how they can benefit from the world needing to maintain and conserve those those areas. As you can see in the top corner, we've identified 9 of the SDGs, the United Nations SDGs, which we're working towards. So that's important to us too. Oh, sorry, gone the wrong way. I mentioned our warden certification project. These are now officially registered wardens. We've got 60 people that have gone through our course from the communities, and we've created a new technical expertise. These people can work, and we've employed 6 of them. We will be employing 6 to 10 more this year, and they work around the concessions as forest wardens. We have a boat and move them around, and they go visit the communities. They're our eyes and ears. I mentioned earlier slightly non-timber forest products. This is also important to us. Inside our concession, we've identified an area of 7,000 hectares, which we have done inventoried and identified 24 potentially commercial species and products. Of these, we're working with 2 palm fruits, aguaje or burrita, some of you might know it internationally as, and acai, which I see they're selling on the corner there. We can buy an acai bowl. We have abundant quantities of these. We also have sheringa or natural latex, which we're going to work on. And we are collecting this fruit from our concession, and we are investing almost $1 million in a fruit processing plant to produce oil. In the community, right next to the concession, another 40 jobs, which we'll be producing. You can see on the left the harvest of the aguaje. On the right, one of the ladies who's attended one of our tree climbing courses, because the communities traditionally, to harvest these fruits, will cut the tree down, which of course is not terribly sustainable. We've now introduced this new system where they will be able to go back to the same tree year on year and harvest the fruit. Producing oil, so we want the communities also to go to their own lands, harvest the fruit, which we will process in our plant, produce into oil, include in our marketing and sales strategy, and they will get the uplift in the price. So it's hugely interesting for them. Just to give you an idea, 100 kilos, 2 sacks of aguaje fruit, once it's been transported and selected, $10 to $15 maybe in the market in Iquitos, we can produce 4 liters of oil from that fruit, which is worth over $100. So a very important uplift in the value of the fruit for them. Loads and loads of things in the forest which we don't know about. So we've got this idea, and we're in the process of implementing the conversion of our old sawmill site. We've got rid of the machinery, and we're going to convert it into a research and development center and a botanic garden. We want to bring products from our forest, identify commercial uses for the products, and develop new ideas. The botanic garden will also focus on medicinal and plants and trees so that we can look at products there. We want to invite scientists, researchers, anybody who wants to come and do some investigation in our 330,000 hectare laboratory. They're welcome to come and work with us and study research the forest. So that's an exciting initiative. Finally, the future. We spend a lot of time looking at how we can step up the process and step up the projects that we've got. The one that we have got is called Loreto 1. We have Loreto 2, 3, and 4 in the pipeline. 2 is a repeat of 1, so we're acquiring new hectares. Some of them are included in that 330,000. We're going to repeat the Loreto 1. Loreto 3 is a community-based agroforestry and carbon project on their degraded land. So our neighboring communities within the Federation we've got about 2,000 hectares there of degraded land, and we're going to develop an agroforestry carbon project with them, and they will get the benefits, the financial benefits from that. We expect to have both those projects validated by the end of this year. Loreto 4 is more ambitious. We're looking at 1 to 2 million hectares and a mixed methodology project, including communities, including possibly national parks, other government land, and other concessions. And we will be the umbrella organization to control that. we're working on it. We'll probably start the implementation of that in 2024. So I don't know how I am with 15 minutes, but thank you for listening, and I'll hand you back to Stuart.
Gareth, thank you very much. And in fact, the last slide that you missed was our team. But anyway, it's a nice team. So we're going to have a brief sort of monitor.
I apologize to my team. Sorry.
There they are. So we're going to have a brief session now with our panelists, and I'm going to ask a few questions. But what we want to do after that is open up to questions from the audience. And I hope you've got lots of interesting questions to answer us. We're quite happy with everything from the technical side through to community strategy and so forth as well. So I'm going to start off Jene. So Jene Thomas, who is head of mission for USAID in Peru. What is USAID's mission, and how does Green Gold fit in with that?
So I'll start by saying that USAID's the largest bilateral development agency in the world. We're a part of the U.S. government. We're one of the U.S. government's foreign affairs agencies. I'm a foreign service officer. The mission of USAID, which was established in 1960, is to partner with less developed countries around the world in order to address economic and social development issues that they are confronting, in order for them to find their own way and finance their own way into much greater development state, in order to ensure greater economic opportunities for their people, greater equity and opportunities for their people, and also to build a partnership of trade with the United States and other developed countries, and to reduce national security risks to the United States, which develop in countries that have less opportunities, as we've seen very present in the last 20 years around the world. USAID has evolved beyond just basic economic and social development programs, but I will say that what we do in Peru looks a lot like what Green Gold Forestry is doing, and both parts, conservation of the natural forest and the standing forest, but also the community development work that they are doing is very similar. And in fact, if I gave a presentation on our work in the Amazon, which is actually the majority of our money in Peru is going to programs in the Amazon and focused heavily on the conservation results. But it would look very similar. We work a lot with indigenous communities on their economic development, their life plans, forestry management projects for their community lands, et cetera. That's funded by us, and I would consider it to be more and more sustainable, because we're moving into working with carbon markets as one of our opportunities to build economic opportunities for communities. But what we see is that in Peru's 60% Amazon. It is the second largest Amazonian country in South America. It is about half the land of the Amazon is either intended for private forestry or timber concessions, or somehow private sector management. 25% is indigenous territory, and 25% approximately is national parks. All of this has to be managed. If it's not managed, it will be cut. And it will legally, I guess primarily illegally cut, and that's what the direction it was headed in before the last few years, when we started to see initiatives developing like the project of Green Gold Forestry. All of us are aware that sustainability in the Amazon is a challenge. Sustainable production of wood is a challenge, and as science evolves, we're seeing that basically what Green Gold Forestry discovered in their research work is that you can either be basically, and I agree fully with this, you can either be sustainable or profitable, but you can't be both in the Amazon, especially the remote Amazon where there are no roads like Loreto, or where the roads are 1,800 kilometers from the nearest port, and it's extremely expensive to get wood out of there. So you have to be very careful what you're doing if you're trying to do sustainability. A lot of companies claim they're sustainable. I believe that some of them are, depending on how they select the wood that they cut. But I think this is a huge concern and threat, and USAID, in its evolving mission of focusing increasingly on climate change, has seized on our opportunities to work with the private sector to develop economically sustainable models that are self-sustaining themselves. USAID has a finite amount of resources. What we see in the climate change challenges are that if you just look at the recent statistics on damages caused by climate change alone, in 2021 it was over $30 billion in developing countries. In 2022, the floods in Pakistan alone were over $30 billion of damage. There's no development agency in the world that's going to be able to confront that, and most of the developing countries have a tiny fraction of what that means in order to try to address that. And so when we look at what we're able to accomplish with our development dollars, it's impossible to confront the climate threat, and we have to turn to the private sector. And so that's why I'm at this conference. That's why I think it's essential what you're doing to invest in profitable forestry and biodiversity conservation projects, and why we identified this innovative project with Green Gold Forestry as a good investment for USAID. We basically are basically the equivalent of maybe startup capital, if you will, in this conversion process. And what they've already identified is that within 3 years of the program, they're going to be issuing VCUs and able to begin to take over the financing of the continuation of the activities. And so I'll say that we have, as a goal for the agency, we have a goal to conserve, restore, or contribute to the conservation, restoration, or management of 100 million hectares. That's our new conservation goal for the agency's strategy under the Biden administration. And we are proposing to help reduce, avoid, or sequester 6 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, mobilize $150 billion in public and private finance for the climate. For climate, most of that's going to have to come from the private sector. And that without the conservation and restoration of the Amazon, we're not going to be able to get ahead of climate change. The Amazon is absolutely essential in our global quest to confront this existential threat. And I'll just end with saying that we're beginning to work on other projects of a similar nature. We're excited about the fact that Green Gold Forestry is expanding their model and looking at going to scale. The only way we're going to get to these ambitious goals of 100 million hectares conserved is through initiatives like this being scaled. This was a pilot project, and we're very excited about the fact that it's growing. We have another initiative that we're starting to do what we call co-creation for with the Madre de Dios Sustainable Landscapes Initiative. Felipe Coughlin is here as CEO of that project. It's on the other side of the Peruvian Amazon in the south by the Bolivia border in a very high biodiversity area of Tambopata. And another opportunity, USAID just announced that we're putting money from our new Enterprise for Development Growth and Empowerment Fund into that project. And we're looking forward to seeing similar types of collaboration. They're working with the Smithsonian Institute, Inca Terra ecotourism company. It has a slightly different twist, and it has a big component on ecotourism, which is a reality that exists in that part of the Peruvian Amazon. And so another opportunity, but with similar types of ambitious goals, working with communities, carbon credits, and conservation of biodiversity. So I'll leave you with that. If you have any questions about USAID, I will not be here this afternoon, but Thomas Rojas, is here. He's our private sector engagement officer, and we'll be happy to talk to you as well, as is Jackie Urquiza here. Jackie, hold your hand up, one of our financial advisors from the mission in Peru. Thank you.
Gene, thank you so much. And I'll tell the audience, I don't think there is a better partner in the world than USAID. It's been incredibly impactful for us, and I think the relationship has been mutually fruitful, I think, and we're very proud to have that relationship. I'm going to turn now to Steve, who is a Senior Director of Conservation International's Smart Forestry Investment Initiative. Probably got one too many words in there. Steve, can you tell us about that and also about its relevance to Peru, and how do things fit together with what's going on in Peru? I should add, actually, for those who don't know Steve, Steve has probably spent more time in Latin America than anybody else I know who doesn't live there. And we've known him for 15 years as a company, and again, an incredible, helpful and incredibly resourceful partner. But I'm spoiling your presentation. So thanks, Steve.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Can everybody hear me okay? I'll try to keep this under 5 minutes. I think our time's limited. So the mantra I'd like to leave you with, and Jene alluded to this, is the forest that pays is the forest that stays. And be that from timber, be that from non-timber forest products, be that from ecotourism, and now, finally, carbon markets are real, and hopefully in the short term, biodiversity credits will also be real. There has to be a product that comes from the forest that generates revenue that keeps it there. And this is precisely what CI has focused on for the last 30 years around the world. And it's particularly interesting. I'm glad to be here with Jene. I started my career 30 years ago with CI on a USAID project in the Maya Biosphere Reserve, where AID was critical in building community forestry concessions that now communities managing something like 300,000 hectares in the Maya Biosphere Reserve. So again, I applaud AID's role in frequently finding companies such as Green Gold Forestry to be innovative and lead the charge. And what we do in climate smart forestry investments, and what's relevant about that in relation to Green Gold Forestry, is we focus our capital on operations that go above and beyond business as usual. Now, that can be changing the industrial paradigm in Brazil with eucalyptus plantations that are utilized for pulp and paper. That can be for restoration of degraded pasture lands with native species, generating revenue from native species that generally don't have much in the marketplace. That can be from improved natural forest management. We're actually working on something called Divine, we're working on that in both Peru and Suriname and Guyana, which is essentially reduced impact logging, looking at the difference in carbon emissions from doing it with the reduced impact approach versus standard business as usual and generating credits from that. Or more pure carbon plays, which we're engaged with companies that are planting native species purely for restoration. They will not ever cut those trees. They will sell carbon credits from those, or the type of model we have here with Green Gold Forestry. In short, what inspires us and what makes us interested in the Green Gold Forestry model and why are we collaborating with them? One, I think, and as Gareth alluded to, and Jene mentioned this as well, site conditions dictate. What works in Loreto would not necessarily work in Mato Grosso del Sul or in Paraguay, and the approach that Green Gold Forestry has developed based on, as Gareth mentioned, 15 years experience from the School of Hard Knocks, developing an approach that fits perfectly Loreto. Again, it might not fit Madre Dios, it might not fit other places, but for where they're at, it fits site conditions. Two, I think this focus on revenue generation, jobs for, we always say local communities, but that's harder to describe. I think I'll use the term immediate communities. Communities that are in and around your concession. You know, benefits to Iquitos or Pucallpa or Lima are less relevant than making sure that people right around that area their economic well-being has been improved from the protection of the concession. And I think going back to the School of Hard Knocks, I mean, it's really essentially, even though it's relatively new, it's field tested. I mean, you guys have been at this for a long time, and you developed a model that really works. This is not, you know, theory, somebody just jumping into Peru and saying, let's do this. They've been at it for a long time, and we have confidence that it will work. And I think finally, and this goes a bit towards the first panel discussion about biodiversity credits, I think the ancillary benefits of something like this. Again, we've invested in eucalyptus plantations, we've invested in native forests, native species plantations, and we are working on investing in natural forest management. They all have their place, but certainly when you're talking about natural forest management of a highly biodiverse forest, the ancillary benefits that come from that, wildlife, native vegetation, et cetera, are huge. And so for those reasons, we're very excited about working with Green Gold Forestry. Particularly, we didn't talk too much about this, about your development of markets for the fruits that you have there. We look forward to eating acai bowls outside the hotel later with acai that comes from Green Gold Forestry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Now look, I know we're running slightly up to the edge, so Murray's going to be quite fast. I'm going to ask Murray a quick question, which he's going to answer. And then I'd like some questions from the audience if we can. So Murray, given your expertise in large-scale mapping and remote sensing, what opportunities do you see in Peru, and what data do you back those up with?
Good question, Stuart. So a very quick background, space intelligence. We're a specialist in DMRV, working with corporates and projects like Stuart with one professor, 9 PhDs, and all of that expertise being baked into technology. So we use a combination of different types of satellite data, so synthetic aperture radar, optical data sets, LiDAR data sets, and integrate all of those to produce maps of biomass and land cover change around the world. And so this is really bringing integrity and transparency into what's going on in the world's forests, and particularly in forest projects like Green Gold, Forestry, and Loreto. But I'm really interested in Peru, really excited by what's going on there. This project really demonstrates there's a huge opportunity to work with communities. And the bigger context is that something like 40 to 45% of all of Peru's emissions come from land use and land use change. And some analysis that we've done recently suggests that there's something like 50 million tons of biomass lost per year in community-owned lands. So we've been looking in the conjunction at deforestation data sets with areas of community-owned land. And so we think that there's actually a huge opportunity for forward-looking projects and funders like USAID to make a real impact on forest loss in Peru, but at the same time support one of the most, conservation of one of the most biodiverse areas of the planet. That in itself is enormously exciting. Obviously, there's a climate benefit, but then also working with some of the world's poorest people. So it's an area which is absolutely ripe for opportunity.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, you've heard a variety of perspectives here, from the US government through to Conservation International, through to one of the world's leading tech companies. Our answer at Green Gold, generally speaking, is yes. We want to do stuff, and we want to work with the best possible people out there. And we're very open. We want scientists to come and work with us. We have a program which we call eco-science tourism. It's not necessarily 5-star accommodation, but we'll accommodate people from science. We've had filmmakers come and see us. We'd like you to come and see us. Some of our shareholders have been out. Every time someone comes to the forest, it creates interest from the local people in why international people are coming in. It creates economic activity. And of course, people go home thinking they've had the most amazing experience of their life. So it's all around good thing. So let's open it up for questions if we can. If you've got any immediate questions, or have we answered them all? Oh, there's one over there. Sorry. Quick, Warren. And could you just introduce yourself, please, as well?
Sure. I'm Will Gifford from the International Missions Trading Association. And I was curious, you were talking a lot about the importance of communities, and I was just curious to hear some feedback on what are you hearing from the communities you're working with about your plan to sell voluntary carbon units and sort of your involvement in the carbon market with your various certifications coming up. But what's the feedback on that?
Okay, I'll pass to Gareth. You want me to answer it? Or? So the question is, and of course there's a no answer in this. So what are the communities thinking about our imminent emergence as a seller of VCUs?
Okay, it's an educational process, of course. It's something that they don't grasp necessarily and automatically. We have a major issue because of and I think we all have heard about the carbon cowboys. So many communities have somehow got the idea that they're all millionaires because somebody's going to give them a load of money for doing nothing. So that's what we're really battling against, and it's educating them that, no, there's actually a lot of work here, there's a lot of conservation, a lot of responsibility, and we will go with you hand in hand and help you. So obviously, we need to find immediate solutions to financial issues. There's also no point in saying to a community, hey, 3 years down the road, you're going to get something from this. We have to be there providing something for them from day one. Otherwise, they don't understand, they don't see the future role. But I would say we're getting good response, and they're understanding little by little about the concept of carbon, the importance of looking after their surroundings, and what that will mean for them in the medium, I would say the short and the medium term, because long term is a little bit more complicated, but we're working on it. And I would also say that our NGO assistance is really important there, because they have been working with NGOs for many, many years, and they have a certain amount of trust in what the NGOs will say.
I'll just emphasize trust. It takes a long while to earn trust, and we've been around for 15 years with that. So I think we're a good partner for the communities. I'll say that publicly. What we're looking to try and do is to give 80% of the profit from any carbon created on community land to the community. I haven't come across a larger share of that anywhere. Plan Vivo, I think, recommends 60%, so we're looking to distribute 80%. Why do we do that? Well, first of all, we need as we said at the outset, changing the lives of communities will reinforce our objectives in our project. But also the scale of things is so big that if we can actually start to cut and paste and develop community-based carbon projects which help the communities transform their life chances, then we think it's a very good thing. We actually think, we hope at least, that people will support us. And the carbon market is not a fungible market, as someone said earlier. It's all to do with quality of the project, the assurance of the baselines, the assurance of the social and the environmental impacts. And we think we're up there in terms of that. So, long answer, short question. Thank you. One more question.
It's an amazing project, really, really impressed. But my question is this: to what extent is USAID able to replicate this with other organizations?
Well, that's a great question. I ask it often, and I don't find many companies that hold concessions in Peru jumping to do this. Green Gold Forestry, I think you've heard from at least one other company in Loreto, I heard. As I said, 50% of the Peruvian Amazon is in concessions of some form or another, or are categorized in a way that it's basically what I call the private sector management would be required. And you would think that there would be more opportunities, but we haven't seen that. So as projects come up, we have one now that I mentioned with Inca Terra and the Smithsonian. Inca Terra Hotel Ecotourism Company and the Smithsonian Institute are partnering with AGE, the world's, I guess, fourth largest beverage company in the world. They're based in Peru and Madrid, and they're interested in superfruits. So we are seeing some initiatives. But on the private side, we're seeing a lot of interest from communities about transforming their, not their concessions, but their territory into titled land that can be then managed, and we're working with a growing number of dozens of communities, and something we've been doing for years. Also, the Park Service is interested in this because they are very interested in getting VCU payments in order to pay for their park rangers, because there's not enough money from the budget, even though the Peruvian budget is quite robust compared to most of its neighbors. But in the private sector, it's still, we're in the very early stages. But I think as payments start to come to Green Gold, we're going to see a lot more interest. We've heard, there's another company in Madre Dios, it's the Castaña. They're doing carbon credits with the Castaña forest, which are highly important from the biodiversity perspective. So but we're really kind of in the first phase of this transformation, and there's a lot of territory. I don't know if you know how many hectares there are in the Peruvian jungle.
78 million.
Well, 68 million or 78 million is a whole lot more than is already under development right now. And but at the same time, the buzz is happening, but actual consolidated projects that are moving forward are fairly minimal.
I know Warren's getting this sign to me, so I got that one. Look, thank you very much indeed for your attention and for the questions. We'll be around for the next 2 days and very happy to discuss all sorts of topics. So whether it's the science of what we're doing, whether it's carbon markets, our views on how to access those markets, who we want as buyers, what sort of conditions we want to apply. And we're also very interested in biodiversity markets and have some views on that. So please engage. I'm best after 6, after the first glass of wine. You'll get my real opinions then. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and we very much enjoyed having you here. Thank you.
One last thing, USAID's about to transition our forestry management programs over the next year, or one of the big ones that worked with the private sector, and we will be putting out an announcement probably towards the end of 23 or early 24, where we will be offering opportunities to apply for assistance for private sector-led initiatives that would lead to conservation, and we're looking to go to scale at millions of hectares through this upcoming initiative. So we are continuing to work in the forest of the Amazon and across all the countries of the Amazon as well. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to watch grants.gov. That's where you find information about USAID offerings at grants.gov. Look for Peru, and you'll see if there's anything out there. But I would look towards fall of this year for the first announcements. Over.